I said, but it's just to assume that this young lady, she's a female Black, just to assume that she had an attitude. Those are some of the small things that we deal with and what's called microaggressions. Um, and we can assign it a word, but either here or there, it's a bias, and some of those things dictate how we are treated, and how we treat others.
Brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, I don't know what this world is coming to.
You're listening to the Black and Blue Podcast, a discussion and celebration of the roles of African Americans and other minorities in U.S. law enforcement. Your host on the Black and Blue Podcast is Dale Peters, a law enforcement professional with over 20 years experience in the business. Hop on board this Black and Blue train of interviews, current events, and pop culture conversations. So get ready. The Black and Blue Podcast is coming at you right now. What up, Black and Blue fan? Welcome to the latest edition of the Black and Blue Podcast, where we celebrate diversity in U.S. law enforcement. My name is Dale, and I'm the host. Thank you for stopping by my little old show, but hopefully I'll give you something of real value with today's amazing guest. But before I introduce today's guest, let me ask you, please, click those like, subscribe, and bell icons right down here on my YouTube channel. And if you listen to me on your favorite podcast platform, make sure you rate the Black and Blue Podcast 5 stars. And finally, make sure you check me out on any one of my social media pages for even more content. You can find me everywhere at Black and Blue US. All right, so with that down, let's get to it. My guest today hails from one of the great cities of the Midwest. So Black and Blue fam, let's all welcome to the show, Cincinnati Police Lieutenant Chantia Miller. How you doing?
I'm well.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You were in Cincinnati, Ohio. How's things today in Cincinnati?
Well, I wouldn't know how things were today in Cincinnati because I just got back from vacation. And I try to stay away from happenings when I'm off work.
Absolutely. I hear you. Yes. Are you originally from Cincinnati?
I am.
Okay.
Born and raised.
Born and raised. I didn't tell you, but I'm originally from Columbus.
Oh, you left that out. Wow.
I did.
Okay. Right up the street.
Yeah. But I left there when I was like 14, so I've been here longer than I was there.
Oh.
But
Ohio
nah. Well, I mean, I still got people there.
Okay.
Yeah. But last time I was there was my grandmother passed, maybe about 10 years ago or so. But so I still got people there. But thanks for coming through. And we'll talk about your journey into law enforcement and Cincinnati. So let's talk about you real quick. So how long you been with Cincinnati PD?
I've been with them 22 years. I started out as a police cadet in 2002. I started as a police cadet in 2002.
Now, what's a police cadet for Cincinnati PD?
Well, back then, a police cadet, it was sort of like an intern with the department. I was responsible for just admin work, doing some of the grunt work, cleaning vehicles, cleaning the target range. But more importantly, it's about learning law enforcement and making sure it's a good fit. Essentially, that's what it was. I worked for the department, doing administrative duties and learning about the jobs.
Okay. And then how old were you then?
I was 18 when I started.
Okay. All right. And then were you trying to just kind of figure out, was this something that you wanted to do later on in life? Is that really what the cadet position is about?
So I didn't like the police at all growing up. And over time, my grandmother said, if you can't beat them, join them. And I said, join who and doing what? Like, I'm not doing that. I said, you got to be more specific. And so she said, change what you don't like. And so I started taking law enforcement classes my junior and senior year in high school. And that's how I became interested in law enforcement. And it was a filler to see if it actually worked for me. And it did. And here I am.
And here you are. And then, so then you went through, I'm sure you got hired after you did your stint as a cadet, you got hired as a police officer. What was the academy life like for you?
So, oh my gosh, you are asking me to go way back in time.
Way back.
So right before I started the academy, I actually had just returned from a tour of duty in Iraq. And so, going through the academy for me was really like the physical fitness was obviously a piece of cake. I was in the military, and not saying that it's a cakewalk for everybody. It was challenging, but I actually enjoyed physical fitness. Um, it was a lot of similar to the military, sort of teaching you courtesies and how to speak to people and stuff. I think the biggest thing that I learned in the academy was that we have to learn a mountain of things in order to make like a molehill decision. And so I think that was the most eye-opening thing for me. It also taught me a lot about me. You know, when I came on a job, I had a lot of different biases and things that I thought about the police. And it wasn't until I became one where I realized that everything I thought was completely either wrong or explainable. So, but the academy for me was fun. I was a treasurer in the academy as well. So, I was a class officer. It was fun, especially because I was a cadet. So I kind of was familiar with the
Right.
staff and some of the processes.
Does Cincinnati only train Cincinnati officers, or do they also train surrounding agencies as well?
So we do actually train. First of all, we actually train Cincinnati firefighters as well. When they become arson investigators, they have to have an Ohio Police Officer Training Commission certification. And we also do partner with other law enforcement agencies. Since I've been there, we have trained Norwood and the University of Cincinnati that I can think of off my head. So
Nice, nice, nice. How large is, first of all, the department, and how large is the city? Because I know Cincinnati is one of the bigger cities, right, in Ohio.
yes, it is. Cincinnati is fascinating depending on how you calculate the numbers, but I say we have a population of about 310,000. We patrol city of Cincinnati 52 or 56 neighborhoods. And I mean, yeah, so that's our population. And the police department. So the last time I checked, our strength was like 1,000, but we are nowhere near that number. I say we're about 800.
Yeah, running behind like everybody nowadays, right?
Yeah, uh-huh. Yep, doing more
Yeah,
with less.
yeah, yeah. Doing more with less. You guys going through a hiring thing right now where you're trying to hire people on?
So we actually changed our process to make it a year-round process. It used to be where it would take we would only have the test once a year, and then we would do hire a class once a year. But now with the revolving door, I think we'll be able to get a lot more candidates and people signed up a lot more faster.
Yeah, yep. All right. Well, hopefully, you guys can get some people through the door because, we're all hurting, and that's one reason why we're doing this podcast to show people a little bit about the profession and Cincinnati in general, in particular. So, you went through the academy, and then what was life like once you got out?
Personally or professionally? um,
Professionally.
Right. So we're going to talk about, being black and blue.
Yeah,
It was definitely different and challenging. Some of the things that I used to do in the places I used to go, I couldn't go anymore. And I wasn't anywhere bad, but I was young when I started. So I used to go out dancing. That kind of had to change. I also lost some connections because people say, "Are you the police?" But it was
yeah.
okay. And it wasn't even like that people were doing wrong. It was just being associated with me at the time caused a lot of problems. Um, but overall, if we are to speak candid, I did go through like an identity crisis, so to speak. I was no
How's that?
longer because I was no longer fitting in with the community that I knew and I grew up with and that I loved. Although I could connect, I wasn't necessarily accepted. And then it was like going to work. I wasn't accepted there either. And it was a little struggle at first.
Wow. Wow. What's like you being African American with Cincinnati PD, what's the numbers in the population back when you first started? You said you weren't accepted as an officer, I would assume being, a black, and not only that but being a black female, right?
Mhm. So I want to say the last time I checked the numbers, and please do not quote me, but our stuff is available on our site, on Cincinnati Police Department's website. But it was probably around 300 Black officers compared to about 700 white officers. And that number's been pretty constant throughout my career. I am lead two, there's two female Black lieutenants out of 42 of us. Um, and so sometimes I feel like we're isolated because
Hmm.
it's so few of us and it's such a large department and we're so spread out. And I think I can't remember the other question that you asked me, what it was like being a female Black or some of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
challenges that I dealt with.
yeah,
Well, first I was young, right? And so I grew up in a lot of the communities that I served. That's who raised me. And so I had a particular dialect and slang that, um, and I didn't change who I was. I was authentically me. I remember one time I was told that I didn't appear professional because I changed my hairstyle. And I was really taken aback by it because culturally, that is just something that we do. Um, and then I
yep,
also had issues when I started, when I noticed this is my third set of locks. The first time I wore them, I was told that my attitude was changing. Um, and it was like just being met with that. Um, and then also like from the vehicles I drove, I used to drive cars with rims, and I mean I was truly authentic to who I was. And so I think, and also I challenged. I always asked why, and I always asked questions, and I never took anything at face value. And so yeah, when I first started my career, I was definitely known for being, and still are, still am, boisterous
yeah.
and who I am. So
Yeah, yeah. That's weird that you say, because the cars that you drove,
mhm.
can you feel that you were kind of like singled out, not only because you were, African American, but because you were female? Because I could see males probably showing up in the same cars and not really getting the same scrutiny that you did.
So, in all fairness, when we talk about the multiple identities that we juggle, it probably wasn't until after I had my son that I even thought about the fact that I was a woman. And so people might be like, "What? Wait, I knew I was a woman." But what I mean is that growing up, the oldest of four, and helping my mother raise kids, and then always just I didn't have a father, so having to protect and provide for my family and for me. Um, my feminine identity was not something that I readily uh, thought about. It was like I still had to handle business. And it wasn't that I
Yeah.
thought I was a man, but man or female, I had to do what I had to do. And so I didn't really think about that until probably when I got promoted to sergeant and had my son. And then I was like, whoa. And probably that's when I started noticing that I was being treated differently. And it was more so because it wasn't like a singled out, and I don't think it necessarily was on purpose. Although I've had my fair share of battles as a female Black, but as a female in general in a male-dominated field, uh, I don't think that there was enough compassion there just during the child rearing stages, and also recognizing that you know a woman's body and energy and mental capacity changes. I don't think the department at the time was actually prepared for that. So
Wow. I mean, Cincinnati PD's got to be, at least over 100 years old, right? And
mhm.
yeah, I won't say they've always had women in these positions since then, but yeah, at least since the 80s, right? And they weren't prepared for that, huh?
So I believe our Ohio Peace Officers Training Commission probably wasn't a thing until the 1980s or so. And so when we talk about professional standards and we talk about processes and procedures, things change over time. And I do, first of all, let me say, I love my department. Having been to the FBI National Academy, having been a law enforcement instructor, several leadership academies, I can definitely say when I leave the room, I'm happy with where I work. But that's not to say that we always don't need room for improvement. And in some of the views I express is obviously views that I had back when I was that officer and a younger officer. But when it comes to when we are talking about working with men, It's just sometimes they expect us to be the same and we're different. But I also have to tell you that I enjoy working with men because they were there when I need them. And it's just about having a healthy balance of both. Professionally, the balance is great, but when it comes to parenting and having to take off for a sick child or having to go to school functions and things of that nature, I think we still have a long way to go, especially in a police academy. Our police
Yeah.
academy, you have to, you have to meet those hours and those
Yep.
requirements. And so I think a lot of women back out of going through the academy because that's like 7 months of you can't miss training. And I
Yeah.
really think that the state needs to look at that and maybe make some modifications and changes.
Yeah, I can see the culture. I can see that being a thing in law enforcement, because the culture in law enforcement is kind of paramilitary, and you being through the military, you would know that. But when you're in the academy and when you get off and you're in training on the FTO program, you got to be locked in, and male and female, and I would assume even more so being female that there's no room really for those changes, and you're saying those things need to kind of change, in your
So
opinion.
they have changed over time. So when you asked
Hmm.
about my experience, I can't say that certain things were there, but over time, I have felt supported throughout my career by male coworkers. Understand that it's all about. I know this sucks. It's all about balance, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, I think when I say changes need to be made, I'm talking about processes and procedures that drive the culture, right? People drive processes and procedures, but then processes and procedures is what, kind of dictates culture. So it's cyclical. Um, if I had to say what needs to change right now, would probably just be mostly the academy. I think that also recognizing that women who and sometimes single fathers, we can't negate single fathers either, who start this job and they're raising their children, because I've
Yep.
had several on
That
my
part.
relief. And for me, it was like, wait, like he's doing the same thing that, other women are doing. And I'm not a single mother. My child's father is very involved, but still it was a struggle because I was, as a primary parent as a young child. So, um, like I also say culturally, I have a funny story. So I was the first female Black instructor at the police academy to be assigned down there full time. And when we talk about some of the cultural differences and shifts, I'm sitting in my office and I had another supervisor come in and she was like, I can't believe recruit so and so. She has an attitude. And I said, well, why did you say that? She said, because we went for a run and we jumped in a swimming pool and everybody's swimming and they're going underwater and she just acts like she couldn't do it. And I was like, oh, did you ask her why? No, not with an attitude like that. And I was like, oh, well, it looks like she had a perm and I don't think she wanted to get her hair wet and for it to fall out. And it was, well, what would happen if she was on duty? I said, I seriously doubt if she had to save a life if she would care about that perm. I said, but it's just to assume that this young lady, she was a female Black, just to assume that she had an attitude. Those are some of the small things that we deal with and what's called microaggressions. Um, and we can assign it a word, but either here or there, it's a bias, and
Yeah.
some of those things dictate how we are treated and how we treat others. So,
Agreed. Yeah. So let's go back. You were talking about that you were an instructor in the academy. Let's go back further, because you got out, you went to the streets and patrol. Let's talk about your career. What'd you do on over there since you before you made lieutenant?
so I graduated the academy. For people who are listening from Cincinnati, I went to District 3. It was one of the busiest districts in the city. I asked not to go there, but God had different plans. So I went to District 3, and I have to say I was a very, very active officer. I have my personnel jacket is full of corrections. I have a few procedures uh, that were modified because of me. And it
The
wasn't.
the
It's
the,
not.
the Miller decision. You got a few
It was Pearson at the
decisions named
time,
after
but
you.
it was Pearson at the time. But it was never because I violated rights or because I did anybody wrong.
Yeah.
It would be stuff like I did get smart. I would get. I mean, I was 22.
No.
And so someone said something to me, I said something back. Um, And so I was very, very active, to say the least. And they say in law enforcement that you get promoted once you get a supervisor that just makes you very upset. And so that's what happened. I had a supervisor who was doing some things that was not so leader like, our manager like, so to speak. And so I was like, you know what,
Right.
I'm getting promoted. So I got promoted to sergeant. As a sergeant, as a PO, I was in two districts. Um, as a sergeant, I was at the Emergency Communications Center. I spent time in the Planning and Development Unit. That's where we made we changed the procedures and the policies to stay up to date with laws. And then I was in the Internal Investigations Unit. We all know what that is. From there, I went through to the Police Academy, and from the Police Academy, I got promoted to lieutenant. Left the police academy, went on patrol to two different districts, and then I was afforded the opportunity to lead youth services, where I was for the past almost 4 years. It's like 3.5 years, until about 2 weeks ago when I became a night inspector. I think the funny thing is when I was a PO, I was not allowed to go to the youth services unit to be a school resource officer, although I did work with them. And then as a sergeant, I was not permitted to go either. But then as a lieutenant, I ended up being a commander of the unit, which was really a awesome opportunity considering the fact that youth services unit is one of the reasons that I'm there because of my school resource officer. So
There you go. Yeah, I did a stint as a resource officer for 4 years at a high school, and yeah, I loved that job. I loved it.
I know, like that keeps your
Yeah.
kids are. Hey, I think today I think today, we always want to talk about the kids today. I really think they are more in touch with who they are. And I always say that they are basically wearing what we failed to fix in society. Like they have to be out loud
Yeah.
with trauma and to be out loud with their trauma and still being controlled by people who haven't addressed theirs personally and professionally in the workplace, in the schools and at home.
Yeah.
These kids are very resilient and they're pushing back in terms of getting the help that they need. So,
Yeah, I think about, some of the things that bullying is a
mhm.
thing that, when I came up when I was in high school and below, it's just something you just dealt with. And some could say, that makes you, harder or softer, whatever, but today's generation, they don't deal with it. They make it known that bullying is not accepted. It's not acceptable, and they handle it. And gender issues as well. That's definitely
Yes,
one thing that this
yes.
generation is full on board with, and
Hmm.
not so much my generation.
And I have to give it to the generation too. They're more accepting and understanding of each other,
Yeah. Yep.
and they they embrace change. And I think it's important to note, like I say, anytime we're talking about youth or we're talking about any department, I just wanted to let the record reflect that youth are different in different cities, just like police officers from different cities and different states and municipalities are all different. And so I'm not generalizing youth. I am only speaking from my experience with youth here in the city of Cincinnati. And I really want to make that clear because I think a lot of times in law enforcement, and when we speak in general, we really want to be general and we want to generalize some of our statements to the public and at large. And I can't. I can only talk about the youth that I deal with here in the city of Cincinnati. Even though there may be some similarities across state lines, it's definitely important to note that I'm talking about the ones that I engage. So,
Sure, sure. Yeah, and I loved engaging those kids. I tell you, just the other day I was in a defensive tactics class and ran into an old partner who was working a graduation at the old school that I was at. I came out
mm,
of the school in 22, and he told me, "Hey, some of the kids came up to me and they said, 'Hey, where's Peters at? We miss Peters.'" I was like, "Oh, that kind of warms your heart." It's been 10 years, 2 years since I've been out of there.
yeah. It does.
Yeah.
I think one of the most rewarding experiences I had similar to that was so when I was in the military, I used to go to this McDonald's every morning before drill. And there was a young man there, and I was just really happy to see him. It was a time where youth weren't really into fast food, especially not a male black. And he was there faithfully. And I want to say for about 8, 9 months, I would just see him and I would encourage him every time I saw him. And so while one day we were on a field trip with our campers during the summer. We went down to the National Underground Freedom Center in Cincinnati, Ohio. And this young man walks up to me and he was like, "Oh my God, it's you. I just want to say thank you." And I'm like, "Okay." I was like, "You're welcome." And he was like, "You don't
For
remember, do you?" I was like, "Sweetie, I meet so many kids and so many people." I said, "But if you refresh my memory, I promise if you tell me the story, I will." And he was like, "McDonald's." I was like, "Oh, what?" And so he was like the director of marketing down there. And he was like, "You don't
wow.
understand. You're like 3 or 4 minute talks when you would come through the drive through really meant something to me. Like you encouraged me every time you saw me." And I was just like, wow. And he was like, "I went to
Yeah.
college, I came back." And I was just like, so like we never know that uniform. Um, we talk about the power of our uniform. It's not just the power to that we talk about taking a life. It's not just the power of liberty, of rights. It's also the power to influence when used the right way. And that's all I've ever wanted to do. My life motto is to leave people better than how I found them. And sometimes that's not always feeling good, but it's definitely with a lesson. And I say not feeling good because sometimes the truth hurts, but I leave them with that as well.
Agreed. Agreed. And you were talking about your current position as a night inspector. What is that?
Yes, a position that is gonna make me cranky. I'm kidding. Who wants to work nights at my age? I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm off
yeah.
night.
No, I know I don't.
Right. So, but I'm blessed to have a job, and it also is an opportunity to meet some of the new officers. And so, as night inspector, I'm basically the eyes and ears for our patrol commander. And what that means is, whenever there's a critical incident, that I'm responsible for making the proper notifications and commanding the scene to bring it back to a safe resolution and to make sure we're all safe, and to report those functions to the chief and to the assistant chiefs the next day. The informal part of the position for me is I have been, like I said, I've been off patrol for almost for 3.5 years. And then prior to that, I did do patrol for 2 years when I became a lieutenant, but it's been a while. And these new faces are coming in and I'm off work and I'm looking at the light and I'm like, "Oh, I don't know that person." And so the opportunity to get out and to meet some of the new faces and to engage them and to, make sure that my skills, my perishable skills are still up to par. I think that's going to be the beauty of the position for me.
Nice, nice. Now, is that a promotion above lieutenant, or is it just
Oh, that ain't
a
no promotion.
collateral
No,
duty, or what is that?
it's collateral
Okay,
duty. It sounds good, don't
okay.
it? It
Yeah,
sounds real
yeah. Night
good.
inspector. Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. All right. More like the watch commander,
Pretty much.
pretty much. All right, cool, cool. And real quick, you say you were born and raised over there in Cincinnati. I noticed you wearing that orange jacket there. Is that Bengal colors?
Who they? Okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm a even though I'm in the LA area, I'm a Niner fan. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, it is. I'm still a
Mhm.
Laker fan, and we still trying. Where's Cincinnati's basketball team? Oh, that's right. Yeah, ain't one. Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Got
Moving
jokes.
on.
Okay. 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 But those colleges,
Yes.
though. Let's talk about those.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Xavier and UC.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. We'll leave that alone. So, you said that you didn't like the police back when you were coming up.
Mm-mm.
Let's talk about that. What were some of those issues that you and your friends and your family and your neighborhood saw with the police, and you said your grandma kind of pushed you in the direction to change those things.
So Cincinnati historically has been at the forefront of various racial issues, protests, riots, but also if you take it back, when we talk about and like we had like one of the biggest migration of Black people around the Jim Crow era. Cincinnati, sitting right next to Kentucky, has had its fair share of issues regarding race. And so I grew up in an area called Price Hill. And the pivotal point for me was when I had some female whites kick my boombox. You used to carry the boombox. It was actually a little Tykes boombox that belonged to my sister. It was
I
colorful. It was
remember.
red with the blue and the yellow speakers,
Yeah,
like and the
with
buttons.
100D batteries. Yeah,
Yes, yeah, and
yeah.
heavy. But you would walk around with your little boombox and the tape deck, hoping to catch a song and hit record when the
Yep.
song got ready. Okay, So we weren't as Black children, we were not allowed in the store. Several of us at a time. However, we had some female whites. They walked right past us. About four of them went all in the store together, and so um they all we walked in the they walked in the store together, and so there I was. We were standing outside, and we like, that's messed up, but it was like, what, whatever. We don't want any issues. And so the young lady, she comes out the store and she kicks my boombox. And I'm
Oh.
like, yeah, we not doing that. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, look, I don't want no problems. And so long story short, we got into a fight. The police were called. And once they got there, I was trying to explain what happened and they didn't want to hear it. And they took my friend to jail and they called me out my name. And I was like, I had your job one day. Lo and behold, I had no idea that I would be here. But I just really did not. It was just unfair. It was they didn't believe when we would tell the truth. The mistreatment, the disrespect. My friend was assaulted when she was taken down to jail. Um, I even had somebody on a job talk about how his father was assaulted by someone who was the assistant chief at the time. And so
Mm.
that's
Mm.
how um yeah, it
Yeah.
was, I mean, the disrespect, the dehumanization. And can you still hear me okay? I do
Absolutely. Yeah.
I do live with children. So
Yeah. I can't even hear him. Actually.
oh, okay, cool. All right.
Yeah. We can't even
It
hear
was
him.
just the dehumanization, the devaluing, the disregarding, and the mistreatment. And for me, I was also, at 12, to be told that I couldn't walk home. They had arrested my grandmother because she refused to sign a ticket.
Mm.
Learning later on, why we do that. But at the time, I'm like, I don't want to go with you in the back of your police car. And it was like to be made to sit in the back of the police car with my grandmother in handcuffs instead of being allowed to walk home, which I wasn't far away. I felt like that was heartbreaking, right?
Yeah.
And
Doing too
so,
much there.
yeah, so it was a lot. Some of the same things I believe still exist in certain jurisdictions today. I say certain jurisdictions because I know Cincinnati has come a long way. I am proud. We still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll get off my
How,
soapbox on that. I'm
how,
writing a
how, how
book
did
though
that
about it all. So
how did that experience kind of, those experiences kind of affect and mold the way that once you got on the job that you policed?
when I got on the job, I was like, I speak very candid. What do you mean that everybody that come from the hood ain't bad? And then I got on the job, was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, something as simple as a
Yeah.
traffic stop. You get out, you put your glasses on, and then you do your gun belt. And I used to think like, oh my God, that's a jerk cop. But it was like the first time I got out the police car as a PPO, probationary police officer, and the sun was shining. So what happened? My glasses went on so I could see. And then I adjusted that belt from sitting in the seat, and it was like, oh my God, the
Yeah.
biases that I held, like the small things that I would just throw at officers. And then it was like, anytime I asked them a question, they were supposed to know. And then it was like I became a cop, and I'm like, I don't know, like, what you asking me for? What time the bus run? I'm just
Right.
it would just be I forgot what you asked me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Just how your experiences coming up and dealing with the police kind of
Oh
shaped
yeah.
the way you
So yeah,
interacted when you got on the job.
I basically that was it. I basically got on the job thinking I was going to teach somebody something. Then I got on the job and realized I don't know anything, and so I had to go back to the drawing board. I went back and got my degree in African diaspora, and then I went and got several certifications in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then I just have been on a go since in trauma informed policing and just learning about how our body trauma works in regards to race. And so um, what started as I'm going to teach somebody something turned into, oh my gosh, I don't even understand my own racial identity in this space, nor did I understand white men and white women outside of my own biases. And so taking that time to actually learn, then being the first female Black instructor at the academy and going through some challenges there, My career, let's just say, I've been able to make a lot of changes. I coined self-awareness as being the most powerful thing that has gotten me through this job. But more importantly, just being able to help people change their perspectives about each other has been very rewarding. Um, yeah, I can go on and on
Yeah.
the career, but it went from I'm gonna teach somebody something to I don't know nothing to let me learn. And now that I understand and I have a experience, now I can go out there and teach and help change, just shifts perspective so that we can start to come together because we're only better
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. You know what a lot of those experiences sound like
Well,
from people outside of law enforcement? When you a kid and then your mom or your dad or your guardian is making you do stuff and you're like, oh, they don't know nothing. And then you become a parent. And you're like, oh my
uh-huh.
God. Oh my God, I'm acting like my mom now.
I
Or that
know.
now I'm my father now, right? You know,
Hmm.
yep. This is exactly what it was.
Like I'm acting like that cop that put over my grandma. Like, look, Miss Lady, I need you to
Yeah.
sign this citation. So, um, I
To a
also
point. To a point. I
yeah, to
mean,
a point, to a
yeah,
point.
you're not being disrespectful and all that sort of stuff to
Yeah,
people.
none of
Yeah.
that, none of that,
Yeah.
none of that. Now, I will say, like I said, if you kind of, so I think some of the challenges was I had to go back to the communities that I served, and so where um, a that kept me humble, but b that kept me in a space of like I have to come back here without this uniform, right? And
Yep.
so how I showed up on the scene was important because I'm going to my aunt's barbecue next week, and you go see me
Right.
there. And I'm not going to be armed because so or sometimes I was, but I didn't want to have to carry that all the time. And so the way I spoke to people and also realizing I had to defend myself, like stand up for myself in the space, was important. And I have to say the police culture didn't understand, why I would get smart or do the neck roll um or tell somebody this uniform comes off. They say, well, that's a threat, and I'm no, it's not, because I was just down here last weekend and they know I'm not going to do anything to them, right? But like, quit playing with me. So
Yeah.
it's like
Yep.
a culture thing, trying to balance the two of those out was kind of interesting. So
Yeah. Yeah. And so now you were a lieutenant, and how long you been on again? Well, how long was that?
oh, you trying to be funny.
No, no, no.
20
20
I've been working with the police department 22 years.
22 years. And what's the future hold for you?
To be honest, I'm in a space of I don't know. In all fairness, I spent most of my life knowing, okay, I'm gonna get promoted to lieutenant. I'm gonna go get my bachelor's, my master's, these certifications. I'm gonna teach. I've done so many things. Right now, the biggest thing the space that I'm in is taking care of what has already been given to me and what God has me take care of in the areas he has me influence, and seeing where it leads. Ultimately, though, I know I'm going to finish my book. I would like to, if I had to just off the top of my head, I do want to be featured. I want to be on Law and Order with Olivia one day. I know I want to
Okay.
play a cop on TV, but I'm a real cop in person. Um, but I want to be an author, a consultant, to speak about the profession and help change some different processes and procedures in other jurisdictions that still need help. So
Well, you actually writing a book right now?
I am.
What's the book on? Or do we have to wait until it hits Amazon?
So I think it's interesting, right? Like when we talk about obviously a lot of cops talk about, being black and blue, um, and the whole juxtaposition of the experience. But
Yes.
for me, I realized that I was putting myself in a box if I only talked about my law enforcement career. And so it is recognizing how self-awareness has helped me in life, at work, um, in all my experiences. I have military experience and just some of the lessons that I've learned throughout my experiences. A lot of it does have to do with race, but it's more importantly about how I stopped making excuses. And I recognize, and this, I don't know if this would be an unpopular opinion. This is the first time I'm ever saying it public like this, is that over time, I realized I was allowed to be more than a black police officer. I was allowed to be more than a female police officer. I was allowed to be a human police officer. And it was like once I stripped myself of having to wear one solid identity, I became more free. And with freedom comes responsibility. And I'm okay with that. And so the book talks about ways in which I held myself back by only embracing my blackness, or only, focusing on my me being a woman. And I am much more than that. And so the book takes you through, walks through different stories and different journeys throughout my career. Um, and it'd probably be a series, because there are a lot of different stories and journeys, and obviously some experience with others with their permission. But yeah, it was about me being allowed to be more than Black, and how embracing um, the self-awareness and self-accountability and the
Yeah.
self-care allowed me to continue to progress in life.
That's what's up. That's what's up. I'm looking forward to seeing that out on the shelves, and I'll pick that one up for sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, yeah. Talking about stories, let's talk about a couple things in your career. This is a sort of a law enforcement podcast, and people that are interested in the career, they got to know that it's not all roses, but sometimes it is. Let's talk about a call or investigation or something that when people ask you about your career, that one kind of was disturbing, something that that maybe kept you up at night, or something like that's really, because we see awful things all the time. It's something that maybe you think about all the time.
All right. I'm not going to talk about just one experience. I'm just going to share the experience of having multiple incidents happen. That's okay.
Yeah.
So I remember my first suicide, and when I go in communities that I serve, where some people see addresses, I see scenes. There are certain parts of the city I prefer not to go to, because I feel my response in my body. There is always a heightened sense of awareness, which can serve you well, and sometimes can be a disservice depending on where you are. But I still recall the suicide. I still recall my first seeing my first OVI scene, where someone was wrapped around a pole and died with the mother of his child behind him. I still see someone being shot and rolling down the hill as I turned the corner and heard the gunshots. I still see where I shot at someone, and I still drive up the road. Anytime I drive up the road where me and my partner were shot at, it's still a visceral feeling. And however, that's life for many of the citizens that we serve. And I remind myself that I'm blessed to have the resources, so that I don't allow those challenges to consume me, so that I can still show up and be my best self for people who may not be afforded those same resources that I have to get better. It is a real thing. And so I'll close with that.
Are some of those resources provided by the department? Wellness and EAP
and
all that sort of stuff?
So, okay, so our wellness department is great. I don't think it still touches a cultural aspect of racial trauma. I think I was scared to have a male Black son because of all the male Black homicides that I would see, all the male Blacks that I seen being locked up. I was like, I do not want any kids. And when it was like, you're having a son, I was in tears. In tears. And so when we talk about wellness, we do have wellness units. However, based on culture, wellness looks different. And so I had to take it a step farther. I do things like float therapy, with silence the noise blocking chambers. I do things, I go sit in the ocean and I just sit there and listen to music, or I read a book. I do a lot of journaling. My daily practices pretty much look like every day. My first 30 minutes to an hour belongs to me. I do not disrupt it or interrupt it. I do not check a phone, think about a phone. My alarm clock goes off, and my first 30 minutes to an hour is mine. And that is to dance, sing, pray, do yoga, lay there, cry, yell. I give to me first, and that keeps me going. So, yeah. But,
Yeah, love that.
and
Yeah.
therapy, I went to therapy.
Okay. All
Yep.
right. So on the flip side of that, let's talk about, you talked about earlier about the young man at the McDonald's. Talk about the, a case or something that you were involved in that, whenever someone talks about the highlight of your career, that's it.
Cases. So I was never an investigator.
Okay.
Um,
Well, maybe you didn't have that official title, but you're all investigators, even on patrol.
yeah, so like I mean we caught so like you get the stolen cars. I've gotten stolen
Yeah.
cars.
Yep.
I have caught the shooter a couple times.
There you go.
I remember one time I caught the shooter. I was pissed though. When you talk about combining and even to this day, I don't know if it was racial or if I was a woman. I don't know what it was, but I asked for some assistance because I believe the shooter went a particular direction. I was ignored, and then I went that direction. I found the shooter, and I thought like, oh my gosh, yes, I get to process the scene. I get to do all of this stuff, and then it was like handed them off, right? And it was just like it was a complete disregard, and it was like you all didn't even when I got over the radio and said I think it's this way, you listened to somebody else who happened to be a male white, right? But this is one of these times where I can say that they do it because I was a female black or because that male white was in the investigative unit, so they believed him more than me coming over the radio and doing it. But either way, to this day neither one of my supervisors ever said thanks, and it kind of sucks, but it's a thankless job, and that includes being not being thanked by your coworkers and peers. You really got
Wow.
to have a heart for it. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's part of the leadership, the failure in leadership, in my opinion, there, right?
I also think the failure in leadership, as we talk about preparing for the new generation, is doing this blanket statement where we continue to punish to the lowest denominator, our discipline according to what somebody else's did when everybody is different. And when we talk about and this is I talk about this in my book when we talk about self-awareness and recognizing that me yelling and getting animated I probably is different than the officer who's quiet and yelling and getting animated. So like
Okay.
where I'm always doing it and I'm constantly being told to tone it down a little bit, right? I could see me being disciplined because I haven't done it. And I'm not saying that's what I do. I'm just using me as an example. But then you get the female officer who's generally quiet, who has a soft spoken sort of like quiet storm energy about her. Um, and she yells at a scene. I don't necessarily think that everybody should start to be disciplined according to just this big generic timeline, because it's so nuanced when we talk about psychology and physiology and human thought and being, that I think we need to get away from just saying that everybody needs to be disciplined the same. And also so I think it's a failure in leadership to not account for the totality of the officer in terms of rendering discipline and even how we address people. And I think I'm going to say the second failure in leadership is I don't know about you and your agency, but I really wish we would get to a place where we have more peer mediation. We don't talk to each other enough and talk out our problems enough within a department.
Yeah. Yeah. I could definitely see that. And that goes to the culture of this profession in general. But it
Mm-hmm.
seems like we're getting away with it with these newer generations of kids coming through nowadays.
Now
They're
they
going to,
saying why they walk up to
yeah.
you. Excuse me, ma'am. You that doesn't make any sense. I don't understand what
Yeah.
you're. Why would I do that? And it's a challenge for some people. I enjoy it. I like it because it's about bringing some of my, and this sucks. I can't believe I'm saying this. Some of my old school experience, my veteran experience, to their new experience, because they're the ones out there on the street patrolling a completely type of different community. So it's
Yeah.
important to listen to
I
them.
think there's definitely got to be a balance
Mm-hmm.
because, and you coming from the military as well, you can't have subordinates always questioning,
Mm-mm.
orders, coming from the rank, from those above them. But why are we doing this? You know, it's
I'm
good
gonna
to
throw it back on
understand.
you. Remember you talked
Maybe in the
about,
debrief,
yeah.
later. But for now, we gonna do
Uh-huh.
it this way.
Yep, and I'm gonna throw it back on you. Remember we talked about the kids and
Yeah,
you don't understand why your parents did what they did. It's sort of like you got to be like the kid, like, hey, this is time to question. This is one of the times where you don't. It's
right.
just about knowing your people, and then they get to know and trust you to make decisions for them. So
Yeah, yeah. And you know, going back in your career as well, you were talking about that you did a stint in IAD,
mm.
internal affairs, and because we were just talking about discipline. What was that experience like for you? And
um,
what do you think? You know, internal affairs, especially in nowadays, with duty to intercede and all those sorts of issues about.
so again, I want to say different departments do things differently. Uh,
Absolutely.
I pride myself on saying duty to intercede is not a thing here. Like it wasn't a thing here, and I'm happy. Well, it wasn't in my career time that I witnessed, and I say that because Cincinnati does have a bad history, and I never want to erase that. But from what I saw, we had no problem saying anything. Like, for example, as a supervisor, I show up and there was an officer who was choked by a subject, and the officer was like, "I got him. I'm gonna take him to my car." And immediately, two officers was like, "Nope, we got him." And I, you could see why you don't want that issue. You don't want that to become an issue. And so I do pride the Cincinnati Police Department on some amazing training. And when we talk about our internal investigations unit, we do a great job. A lot of people talk about the code of silence. Again, I am only speaking for Cincinnati. I cannot speak for other agencies. I'm not losing my job or my integrity. I am not, my spiritual essence will not be violated because I'm trying to cover something up. And
That
so
part.
the biggest thing I learned in internal was when it comes sometimes citizens don't understand our language, and I don't believe we do a great job in law enforcement of explaining things in a way that makes it more understandable for the normal citizen. So that's one. Number two, when it comes to internal, I think that again there's a disconnect. We have a process where we can have the citizen come and meet the officer. I think we could do a better job of going out to meet the citizen, right? Instead of saying, "Hey, can you come and meet me in my office?" It's like for me, I would be like, "Can I come and meet you at your job at the light at the cafe, and we buy you lunch so we can
Right.
sit and talk to the officer about the incident?" Because the officer does not. The citizen can say things to the officer that I can't say, but being able to be the mediator, I've sat in enough meetings to see the change that occurs between the officer and the citizen, and we don't do enough of those. And then the last thing I'm gonna say internally, I think the biggest thing is we get a bad. I got a bad rap. Like nobody wants to talk to her. She's internal, and it was like I noticed that um, officers really come in there and tell the truth, but then we have a culture that does not support them doing it, meaning that we internal has to be the bad guy. Um,
Right.
and it would just be small stuff, and I really for the life of me can't understand it because it was like your truth was fine. Why did you have to seem like we were coming for you? But to me it just means that internal is we're doing our job. And so um I did it was okay while I was there, but I think I might have got in and out the fastest. And normally people do 2 years. I did about 9 months. No, about
Oh,
11 months. About 11 months.
but
Like,
yeah,
I was like,
okay.
I
Just
gotta
under a
go.
year.
Gotta go.
Yeah.
Gotta go. Yeah, can't do
Yeah.
it.
It's definitely needed. You know, to keep us honest and transparent and all that for the community. But yeah, it takes a special person to work that unit.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was rough.
Yeah. I'm glad you did it.
Thanks.
I ain't never
Um,
do it, but somebody got to though.
I was voluntold,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
It's weird in my department because I'm a smaller agency. I work for a
mhm,
smaller agency. We're only about 100 sworn. So, you know, people that go through there is, you know, everybody, we know each other, you know. When you
mhm.
get to larger agencies, maybe like yours and, you know, LAPD out here, uh, you know, when they got like 10,000 cops, you may never even
New
know.
York.
Yeah. New York, 30,000, you know,
So again, that's why I tell
it's a little
people
different.
like when we're watching this, when you're listening and you're learning about law enforcement, um, it is so critical. So I also do have I hesitate to say it. So we just have to become more conscious about the way that we evaluate our agencies and the way we evaluate what we're doing. And I believe that if we start to focus personally, our personal and our local experiences regarding our law enforcement agencies, then we can start to make more change. Because I can't be a cop in New York. You going to New York? I ain't going to New York.
Right? Yeah.
My hats off to you in New York. My hats off to you in Chicago. I'll stay right here in Cincinnati, right? And so, to tell a Chicago officer what they should and shouldn't be doing because of what we do here in Cincinnati without having some level of understanding, we can't keep doing that. And I think that's where a lot of activists go wrong when we want to help change law enforcement is they judge the local agencies based off of what they see in the media versus actually
Yes.
taking the time to get to know their police department. And I don't want to spoil everything in my book. So
Yes,
yeah.
we will definitely look forward to that book when it gets out. And hey, LT, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. It was fun.
Oh, and if you want to catch me in action, by the way, they still play reruns of Policewoman in Cincinnati. So if anybody out there wanna
Oh, were you on that?
I was
Okay.
I was
What
at
the was that on A&E? What was that
TLC.
on?
TLC.
TLC. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Isn't that the one that does the 600-pound life and all that?
That's them.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Oprah
Yep.
plays it on her she still
On
plays it on
OWN?
her network too. Yeah, but she ain't had us on the show yet.
No. All right. All
I'm
right.
just saying.
So yeah, I'll be sure to check that out.
All right.
Were you a sergeant back then or on patrol? What were you?
I was actually a patrol officer, about to be promoted to sergeant.
Yeah.
So you fire a lot of questions. I have one question for you.
Absolutely.
And you probably already answered it before, but like how has doing a podcast changed your perspective on policing or the community or just the way you police in general? I'm
You
talking
know
to
what?
different people in various
Yeah,
places.
you know what? It hasn't changed my perspective, but it's been good to see how people, how officers across this country can. Because I've talked to people from my side in LA all the way over to New York and down south and up north, and seeing the different perspectives and how people do different things, and it's really kind of helped me. I bring some of these stories back to my coworkers and my admin and say, I spoke to one officer or one chief or one lieutenant, and they told me this, and maybe we can do this. So it's been real helpful in that regard. Definitely.
All right.
Yeah.
Because I
I
really
like,
hope to the citizen watching who may be on the fence about whether or not you um like police officers or whether or not you trust police officers. The majority of us are really, really here to help, to serve. We love what we do. We love catching a bad guy. We love serving. And but we do also understand where the distrust comes from. And we all have to slowly start to peel back the layers, and get to a place to where we start to ask, well, what does trust look like? As a person who studies history, I know the historical connection between policing in America. Uh, but we want to change it. We want to become true. Well, we are become true public servants, and here for service. And so I just ask that maybe before you jump to conclusions about certain things, take some time and read and consider different perspectives. Because bad guys are out there, bad people are out there, black and white, they are
yep.
out there. And I do not need every officer next to me, like me, singing, kumbaya and trying to bring peace. I need some hard-hitting police officers too, who can do things in balance because bad people exist. And I think we forget about that all the time about the people who prey on people, black and white and purple and blue. So
Yes. Yes. 90% of the time we should have the guardian mindset, right?
mm-hmm.
It's that other 10% where we need to flip the switch, go be a
Mm-hmm.
warrior.
Mm-hmm.
And we have it in us.
We do.
It's all about that balance. All
I
about that
gotta go
balance.
home. I
Yeah,
have to come
for
home.
sure. For
So,
sure. All right,
um,
LT. Hey again. I appreciate the conversation. I'll be looking for that book.
okay, I appreciate it. Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
get to writing.
All
What
right.
chapter are you on?
I have 4.5 chapters to go. Yep, I'm
Okay.
on chapter. So, I'm doing 12 chapters in each series, each book, 12 chapters, because that's what they call it. So it just makes it easier. So
Light at the end of the tunnel.
it is.
Yeah.
I didn't get to look you up. Have you finished the book?
I have never
Finished it
read I've never written a book.
yet?
Well, there's always that possibility. Always that possibility. I don't know
Um,
what I would write about, but yeah, hey, you never know. I do like the talk about that. First you were talking about how police officers were not all the same. That's kind of why I got into this business, and we got that duality where black folks, we're not all the same. We always hear that we're not a monolith. We're not all Democrats. We're not all in the hip hop. Some of us like sci-fi. Some of us like country music. Some that
mhm.
we're all different, and same thing in policing too. We're not all the same and all robots, and I like to show that part of us as well on this show.
Yeah, and white officers care just as much as black
Yes,
officers.
yep,
They really
absolutely,
do.
absolutely. I work with some great ones.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
All right.
All right, LT. Well, thank you for coming
Thanks.
through, and go be that night inspector.
All right.
Unfortunately.
Well,
Yeah,
you have a good evening yourself. Thank you.
you too. You too. Go Niners.
All right. Go who? Who they? I made it on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, who they? All right, LT, you take care. All right, now, that was a great interview. Listen, I want to thank Cincinnati Police Lieutenant Chantia Miller for dropping by and sharing her story with us. I appreciate you, LT, and wish you much success in the future. If you guys enjoyed my conversation with Lieutenant Miller, please let me know by leaving a comment in the section down there below. And don't forget to like and share this episode as well. I'll be back before you know it with another smoking hot conversation with another minority in U.S. law enforcement. But till then, y'all know the phrase, stay black in blue. I'll holler at you. Peace.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.